What if the greatest lie in human history is carved directly into the side of a mountain? They say history is written by the victors, but in this case it wasn't just written, it was chiseled into a limestone cliff 300 feet above the ground, where no one could check the facts, but everyone had to look up and obey. We are talking about a cover-up so massive, so bloody and so successful that it fooled the world for 2,500 years. You know Darius the Great, the guy who built Persepolis, the guy who invaded Greece? We call him the Great because he told us to. But if you actually look at the evidence, if you look at the timeline, the bodies, and the sheer absurdity of his story, a terrifying picture starts to emerge. What if Darius wasn't the hero who saved the empire? What if he was the serial killer who stole it? Today, we are going to crime scene investigation, the Behistun Inscription. We're going to look at the official story of how Darius took power, and I'm going to show you why it is absolute nonsense. We're talking about earless wizards, secret assassinations, a horse that neighed at the right time, and a body count that would make Game of Thrones look like a children's book. By the end of this, you aren't going to look at the Persian Empire the same way again. You're going to see it for what it might have really been, the result of the most successful conspiracy theory of all time. Let's go back to 522 BC. This is the year everything went crazy. To understand this mess, you have to understand the family tree. You had Cyrus the Great, the big boss, the founder. He dies, right? And he leaves behind two sons, Cambyses and Bardiya. Cambyses is the oldest. He's the king. He's the guy currently running the show. Bardiya is the younger brother. He's popular, he's buff, everyone likes him. So the official story, the one Darius carved into that rock, goes like this. Cambyses goes off to conquer Egypt, but before he leaves he gets paranoid. He thinks, man, my brother Bardiya is too popular. If I leave, he's going to take my throne. So, according to Darius, Cambyses secretly orders a hitman to kill his own brother. Now, pause here. This is point number one. The murder is secret. Darius says that Cambyses killed Bardiya and nobody knew. Not the court, not the people, not even the family. Just Cambyses and his hitman. Does that sound right to you? The king's brother disappears and nobody asks questions? Hey, where's Bardiya? Oh, he's on vacation. For years. But let's play along. Let's say Cambyses kills his brother and goes to Egypt. While he's down there, things go wrong. A rebellion starts back home in Persia. A man sits on the throne and claims to be Bardiya. But wait, Bardiya is dead. We know that, right? Cambyses had him killed. So who is this guy on the throne? This is where Darius's story goes off the rails. According to the inscription, this isn't Bardiya. This is a magus, a priest named Gaumata. And get this, Gaumata just happens to look exactly like Bardiya. Like identical twin level. So this wizard, Gaumata, knows that the real Bardiya is dead, somehow, and he decides, I'm going to take the throne. He sits on the throne, tells everyone, hey guys, it's me, Bardiya, I'm back. And the whole empire believes him. I mean, come on. You have to admit that sounds like the plot of a bad soap opera. The evil twin brother. But it gets better. Cambyses, the real king, is in Egypt. He hears that Bardiya has taken the throne. He knows it's a lie because he killed the real Bardiya. So he jumps on his horse to ride back and kill the imposter. But oops, he accidentally stabs himself in the leg with his own sword while mounting his horse, gets gangrene and dies. Convenient, right? So now the imposter is the undisputed king, and nobody knows he's a fake. Enter Darius. Darius isn't the son of the king, he's a cousin, a distant cousin. He's literally a spear-bearer in the army. But he figures it out. He realizes the king is a fake. He gets 6 of his buddies, 7 noblemen in total, and they rush the palace. They sneak into the royal chambers at night, they stab the imposter to death, and then they come out covered in blood and tell everyone, "Don't worry, guys, that wasn't the king. That was a wizard named Galmata. We saved you." And then Darius becomes king. That is the story carved into the Behistun Inscription. That is the story Herodotus wrote down. That is the story that was taught as fact for centuries. But look at it closely. Just take a step back and look at the logistics of this. You have a guy who claims to be the son of Cyrus. The people love him. He lowers taxes. He stops military conscription for 3 years. The empire is happy. Then a group of 7 generals breaks into his bedroom, murders him in cold blood, and tells everyone, actually, he was a wizard. If you were a Persian peasant in 522 BC, would you believe that? Or would you think, wait, did that general just murder the son of Cyrus and steal the crown? Let's dig into the clues. Because once you start pulling at the threads, the whole tapestry falls apart. Clue number 1, the ears. This is my favorite part of the official story because it is so ridiculous. So the imposter, Galmata, is pretending to be Bardiya. But there's a problem. Apparently, years ago, Cyrus the Great had punished this wizard Galmata by cutting off his ears. So the imposter king has no ears. But he's wearing a turban or a crown all the time, so nobody notices. But what about his wives? He inherited all of the real Bardiya's wives. Surely, when they are in bed, they'd notice their husband is missing his ears. Well, Darius has an explanation for that too. He says the imposter kept the wives separated so they couldn't talk to each other. But one of the nobles, a guy named Achaemenid, gets suspicious. His daughter, Phedemia, is one of the wives. So Achaemenid sends a secret message to his daughter. Hey, next time you're in bed with the king, wait until he falls asleep and touch his head. Check if he has ears. She does it. She feels around. No ears. She sends a message back. Dad, no ears. And that is how they confirm it's the wizard. Really? That's the proof? That is the specific detail Darius wanted us to know. It feels like a story you invent to explain why the wives didn't speak up. Oh, they didn't know because he hid his ears. Or maybe the wives didn't speak up because it was their husband. Maybe it was Bardiya. And maybe Darius had to invent this insane no-ears story to explain why the women in the palace were probably screaming, "You murdered my husband," when Darius killed him. Let's look at clue number 2, the speed. Darius acted fast, suspiciously fast. Cambyses dies in the summer. Darius and his 6 friends kill the imposter in September. Darius claims he had to act fast to save the empire from the wizard. But let's look at who Darius actually was. He was a member of the Achaemenid family, yes, but from a different branch. He wasn't in the direct line of succession. If the real Bardiya was dead and Cambyses was dead, who should be king? Well, there were other people closer to the bloodline than Darius, but Darius had the army, or at least he had the connections. When he killed the man on the throne, he didn't hold a trial. He didn't expose the imposter publicly. He didn't bring him out to the square and pull off his turban and say, "Look, no ears." No, he assassinated him in a dark room at night. Why? Why kill him in secret if you have proof he's a fake? You only kill him in secret if you're afraid of what he might say. Imagine if Darius dragged him out in public. and the man on the throne shouted, "I am Bardiya, son of Cyrus. This man is trying to kill me." The people would have torn Darius apart. The army would have turned on him. So the imposter had to die before he could speak. Now here is the smoking gun. Clue number 3, the Revolts. This is the part that Darius actually admits to in the inscription, but he spins it. If Darius was the hero who killed a hated, lying wizard, the people should have cheered, right? Hooray! The tyrant is dead! Long live Darius! That's not what happened. The moment Darius announced he was king, the entire empire caught fire. Babylon revolted, Elam revolted, Media revolted, Parthia, Assyria, Egypt, they all rose up. Darius spent the first year of his reign fighting 19 battles. He had to reconquer the entire Persian Empire from scratch. Why? Darius says it's because the lie had infected the people. He calls all these rebel leaders liar kings. He says they all claim to be someone they weren't. But look at the map. Look at the scale. People don't revolt against a savior, they revolt against a usurper. The people of Persia loved Bardiya. He was the son of Cyrus. He gave them a tax break. When news spread that Darius, some general from a minor branch of the family, had murdered Bardiya, the people were furious. They weren't revolting because they were deceived. They were revolting because they refused to accept the murderer of Cyrus's son as their king. And here is where the conspiracy gets even darker. In the inscription, Darius lists the rebel leaders he defeated. One of them was a man in Persia named Vyazdatta. And guess who Vyazdatta claimed to be? He claimed to be Bardiya. So now we have 2 guys claiming to be Bardiya. Darius says, "Oh, that guy was a liar too. The first guy was a wizard who pretended to be Bardiya. I killed him. Then this second guy popped up and also pretended to be Bardiya. I killed him too. How many fake Bardiyas are we supposed to believe in?" Doesn't it make more sense that the first man Darius killed was the real Bardiya? And the second man, Vyazdatta, was maybe a relative or a loyalist taking up his name to fight the usurper. Or maybe the first guy was the real Bardiya, and the people of Persia knew it, so they rallied behind anyone who carried his banner. Darius calls them liar kings, but maybe the only liar king was Darius. We need to talk about the murder itself, the night of the coup. It's actually a thrilling story, even if it is a lie. So Darius and his 6 friends, Otanes, Gobryas, Interfernes, Hydarnes, Megabyzus and Ardumanish, they decide tonight is the night. They ride to the fortress of Sikayavati, where the imposter is staying. They bluff their way past the guards. "We are high nobles. We need to see the king." The guards let them in because, well, these are the most powerful men in Persia. They get to the royal chambers. The eunuchs try to stop them. Darius and his friends draw their daggers and stab the eunuchs. They burst into the room. The imposter is there with a concubine. He jumps up. He grabs a bow. One of the other conspirators, Gobryas, tackles him. They are wrestling on the floor in the dark. Darius is standing there with his dagger, but he hesitates. He's afraid he'll stab his friend Gobryas in the dark. Gobryas shouts, "Strike, even if you hit both of us." Darius strikes. The dagger finds the king. The king dies. They cut off his head. They run outside. They show the head to the guards. The coup is over. It's cinematic. It's heroic. It's also exactly the kind of story you tell to make yourself look like a badass action hero, instead of a guy who just stabbed his cousin in his sleep. But here's the weird part. After the murder, the 7 conspirators have a meeting. They discuss what to do next. According to Herodotus, they actually debated democracy. Otanes says, Maybe we shouldn't have a king, maybe the people should rule. Yeah, right. I'm sure 7 Persian aristocrats in 522 BC sat around discussing the merits of Greek democracy. That sounds totally plausible. Eventually they decide, nah, monarchy is best. But who gets to be king? There are 7 of them. They decide to leave it to the gods. They agree to meet the next morning at sunrise on their horses. The first man whose horse neighs after the sun rises will be king. Sounds fair, right? A divine lottery. But Darius isn't the type to leave things to chance. Darius has a groom, a horse handler, named Obares. Darius goes to him and says, "Fix it." So Obares has a trick. The night before the contest, he takes Darius's horse to a specific spot and lets him mate with a mare. The horse has a great time. The next morning, the 7 conspirators ride out. As they pass that exact spot, Darius's horse remembers the fun he had last night. He gets excited, he neighs. Boom! Darius is king. This is the official story. This is what the Greeks believed. Even in the story designed to make him look good, Darius is a cheater. He rigged the divine election. So we have a guy who lies about the imposter, murders the king, and then cheats his own friends to take the crown. And this is the man we call the Great. But we haven't even talked about the weirdest part yet, the Behistun Inscription itself. Why is it there? It's not in the capital, it's not in Persepolis or Susa, it's on the side of a mountain on the road between Babylon and Media, and it is high up, like really high. In fact, after the workers finished carving it, they destroyed the ledge they were standing on so that nobody could ever get close enough to deface it. This means nobody could read it either. From the ground, the text is too small. You can't see the details. You just see a carving of a big guy, Darius, stepping on a little guy, Gaumata. So why write thousands of words of text in 3 different languages, Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, if nobody can read it? Because it wasn't for the people, it was for the gods, or maybe it was for the future. Darius knew his claim was weak. He knew he was a usurper. He knew that people were whispering. He needed to set his version of the truth in stone, literally. He wanted to make sure that 2,000 years later, when people like you and me were digging up his empire, his version was the only one left. And for a long time it worked. When Henry Rawlinson, the British officer, climbed up that cliff in the 1800s to translate it, he risked his life. He hung by ropes to copy the text, and when he translated it, the world said, "Ah, so that's what happened. Darius killed a wizard." It took decades for historians to start scratching their heads and saying, "Wait, this timeline doesn't work." Think about the psychological game Darius is playing here. He calls truth Arta and the lie Drauga. In his inscription, he says over and over again, "I am not a liar. I am not a wrongdoer. Thou who shalt be king hereafter, punish the liar." He is obsessed with the concept of the lie. Psychologists might call this projection. If you are the biggest liar in the room, the best defense is to accuse everyone else of lying. Darius calls the rebels liar kings. He calls Gaumata the lie. He frames his entire reign as a holy war of truth against lies. But the man who protests too much usually has something to hide. Let's talk about the body count of this truth. To secure his throne, Darius didn't just kill the imposter, he had to purge the court. Interfernes, remember him? One of the 7 conspirators. One of Darius's best friends who helped him kill the king. Shortly after Darius takes the throne, Interfernes tries to enter the palace. The guards stop him because Darius is with a woman. Interfernes gets angry, draws his sword, and cuts off the ears and noses of the guards. Darius arrests him. But he doesn't just arrest Interfernes. He arrests his sons, his brothers, his entire family. He executes almost all of them. Why? Because Interfernes knew the truth. He was there that night. He knew who they really killed. If you are Darius, you can't have loose ends walking around. The other conspirators were paid off with massive wealth and positions. But Interfernes got difficult, so he got erased. And what about the other liar kings? Phraortes in Media, Chithrantakma in Sagatia, Vyasdata in Persia. Darius didn't just defeat them, he made examples of them. The inscription describes exactly what he did. It's gruesome. I cut off his nose and his ears and his tongue, and I put out one of his eyes, and he was kept bound at my palace entrance. All the people saw him. Afterward, I impaled him. He did this over and over again. Mutilation, display, execution. This is not the behavior of a man confident in his legal right to rule. This is the behavior of a man ruling through absolute terror. He needed to show the world that questioning his story meant losing your tongue. Literally. If you can't speak, you can't tell the truth about Bardiya. But here is the counter-argument. I want to be fair to Darius. Is it possible the official story is true? Could there really have been a wizard? I mean, history is weird. Stranger things have happened. Maybe Cambyses really did kill his brother. Maybe a lookalike really did seize the opportunity. But the DNA evidence, well, we don't have DNA evidence, but the dynastic evidence suggests otherwise. Darius went to great lengths to marry into Cyrus's family after the coup. He married Atossa. Who was Atossa? She was the daughter of Cyrus, and she was the wife of Bardiya. Wait, so Darius kills the imposter Bardiya and then immediately marries his widow. If the man on the throne was a wizard, wouldn't Atossa know? And if Darius killed the wizard, wouldn't Atossa be grateful? But if the man on the throne was her husband Bardiya and Darius killed him, then Darius forced her to marry her husband's murderer. That is a very different dynamic. And Atossa becomes the most powerful woman in the empire. Her son, Xerxes, becomes the next king. Why did Darius choose Xerxes as his heir? He had older sons, but those sons were from a common wife. Xerxes was the son of Atossa, the grandson of Cyrus. Darius needed that bloodline. He needed to merge his usurper branch with the royal branch to make sure nobody could question his kids. It all points to a man desperately trying to legitimize a theft. Now, let's zoom out. Why does this matter? Who cares about a 2,500-year-old cold case? It matters because Darius created the blueprint for the Persian Empire. He reorganized the satrapies. He built the royal road. He created the currency, the daric. He built Persepolis. The Persian Empire that Alexander the Great conquered? That was Darius's empire, not Cyrus's. If Darius hadn't seized power, history would be completely different. Maybe the Persian Wars with Greece wouldn't have happened. Darius invaded Greece because he needed military victories to prove his strength. He needed to expand to keep the army loyal. A legitimate king like Bardiya might have been content to just rule, but a usurper has to keep moving. He has to keep winning. The Battle of Marathon? That happened because Darius needed a win. The burning of Athens? That was Darius's son, Xerxes. The entire conflict between East and West that shaped Western civilization, it might all stem from this one night in 522 BC, when a general decided to stab a prince and call him a wizard. It also teaches us a scary lesson about propaganda. Darius understood something very modern. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it and carve it into a mountain where no one can erase it, people will believe it. He controlled the narrative. He controlled the media, which back then was stone inscriptions and town criers. And because he killed everyone who knew the truth, his version became the truth. It makes you wonder, what other facts in our history books are just the lies of the winner carved into stone? Did Nero really burn Rome? Or did his enemies just say he did? Did Richard III really kill the princes in the tower? Or was that Tudor propaganda? We rely on texts. We rely on inscriptions. But texts are written by people, and people have agendas. The Behistun Inscription is a UNESCO World Heritage Site today. It is a masterpiece of art. It unlocked the cuneiform script for us. It is invaluable. But it is also a monument to a crime. When you look at that carving, Darius standing tall, holding a bow, his foot on the chest of the wizard Gaumata, who is begging for mercy. You aren't seeing justice. You are seeing a mafia boss posing over his victim. You are seeing the moment the Achaemenid Empire lost its innocence and became a machine of power. Cyrus the Great was known as a father to his people. Cambyses was known as a master. Darius? The Persians called him a huckster, a merchant, because he taxed everything. He treated the empire like a business. Maybe that's what happens when you steal the company. You have to squeeze every penny out of it to pay for the security guards. So, what do you think? I want you to be the jury. Look at the evidence. 1. The secret murder of the popular brother. 2. The imposter who looks exactly like him. 3. The no ears story. 4. The swift assassination without trial. 5. The massive revolts against the savior. 6. The convenient death of the real king Cambyses. Does that spell divine intervention to you, or does it spell coup? I know which way I'm voting. I think poor Bardiya, the son of Cyrus, woke up one night to find his cousin standing over him with a knife. And the last thing he heard wasn't a prayer to the gods, it was the sound of history being rewritten. History is a fragile thing. It's a collection of stories we agree to believe. But sometimes you have to grab a hammer and chip away at the stone to find the truth underneath. If Darius could fool the world for 2,500 years, who is fooling us right now? Think about it.